being a performer.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We'll, I need to give Rob some time on this, and thank you guys for being here today. We're glad to see Laura back after foot surgery. We're glad to see Bert back after two back surgeries. Yes, how long have I forgotten already? So we're glad you're here. We got Faye's mom is back with us, and so we're glad she's here as well.
I wasn't.
Okay, so
That did it.
let's go through the church-wide announcements. If you don't have, well, let's see, we're all out of it. Okay, so on page 8, you're going to see about Wilshire solar panels generating savings. That's a great thing on page 8 of your tapestry. Amy Butler's preaching today, and the next three preachers are on there as well on page 9. Adventures lunch and program on page 10, and COVID task update on page 9, on page 10 as well. A lunch again today. We're going to have lunch through August 14th. And that's been a fun time. Join us if you can. On that, you can pay ahead of time or pay at the actual event downstairs. It's fun to meet people that you don't really know well. Okay, Charles Yarborough is our I Am Wilshire today. I see cooking camp pictures. That's great on page 14. And I think that's pretty much it for the overall announcement. Any more church-wide announcements that I'm missing on that? We've got several out today. The Floyds are in Italy with their children and with a daughter and her family. But that's a fun thing. Vicky and Bert. Brian. You on my mind. And Brian Rollins are still suffering and testing positive for COVID. So. We'll hope that we get through that as well. And there's a card going around, if you haven't seen it, that Diana bought. Henry Stone's father died on Thursday. Henry used to be our assistant director and is former chair of deacons, etc. But he was a good man. And Bill, we knew Bill and his wife from Broadway when we were at Broadway. But anyway, if you haven't seen the card, sign that. You got it right here. Okay, and we'll get that passed around. Thank you. Anybody missing this? Okay. All right, I think it's all yours until about 10:40.
Okay, good. Well, I see some people who were here last week and many who were not, so this reminds me of my experience when I had a class that I taught for about 20 years up here, that we seemed to have like a group A and a group B that alternated weeks, so that if I had a lesson that carried over from one week to the next, it was, spend the first part of the second week summarizing. So we'll do that a little bit here today. As you know, we're studying in the book of Job, and fortunately, I think a lot of people are familiar with the story. So I'm just going to spend just a couple of minutes kind of bringing you up to date on the story. And where we left off last week was talking about the issues, some of the issues that are presented by that story, and that we'd be talking more about that this week. So I did a lot of talking last week. I hope to do less this week and hear more from you about what your views are on some of the issues. So we know that the story involves this character named Job, who is, in the words of God, blameless and upright. He's a very good man, and God thinks he's a good man. And so God and his heavenly council are sitting around the conference room table one day in heaven, and he asks this character by the name of Satan what he's been up to. Well, he's just been going, around the earth, seeing, observing people on the earth, and God says, well, have you run across this fellow Job? He is really a good person. He's blameless and upright in every respect. And the Satan says, well, you have really treated him very, very well. He's wealthy, he has a wonderful family, he is loyal to you, but I'm wondering if that isn't the reason why he's so faithful to you, is because you've treated him so well. what do you think he would do? Do you think he would curse you if he were to suffer some misfortune? And God says, well, let's see. But the one thing that you cannot do is you cannot harm him personally. You can give him misfortune, but you can't harm him personally. So, sure enough, Job suffers great misfortune. His crops are destroyed. His vast holdings of animals are destroyed. His family is destroyed. His children and his home are all destroyed. But he's not harmed physically himself. And Job's reaction to all of this is, well, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, and he doesn't curse God. So God is together with his heavenly beings again, and the Satan says, well, let's strike him again and see how he reacts. So the Lord says, okay, you can do that, you can harm him physically, you cannot kill him. Job has to survive. So the second round of catastrophes strikes Job, and he has these, he's just afflicted with every kind of physical harm that you could imagine. He is totally miserable. He survives. His wife, of course, very loyal to him, says, why don't you just curse God, die, and get it over with? So she's a big help. But Job still does not curse God. Through all of this, he does not curse God. And he has 3 friends who have heard about his misfortune, and they come to visit him. And one of the things that we talked about last week was they sit with Job for 7 days and 7 nights, and nobody says a word. And the editorial comment to that, my observation was that's a really good lesson for all of us when we're sitting with someone, when we're inclined to respond to someone who's going through a difficult time, is just being there is really a good thing, and maybe way more important than anything that you might say. We're always inclined, for some reason, to feel the need to say something very profound and demonstrate our great knowledge and empathy and all of that. But just being there is so important, and it's clear that these friends were much better off silent than they were when they spoke, and we're going to get into what just glimpses of what they said. It was all the same thing, the thinking, and I think that this is really sort of the writer is testing the belief of that period of time when this is an ancient, maybe the first writing of the Bible. Obviously not the first book, but the first written word that made its way into the Bible. And it's but they're examining this notion that it's God who causes bad things to happen in a person's life, and usually what he's doing, it's either a test of your loyalty, or it's discipline for something that you've done wrong. That was the common thinking of that time. And so we said last week that we're going to examine some of the issues that are raised by this story. Are, why do we love God? Why are we faithful to God? Is it because we expect something in return? Is it a transaction in effect? In other words, you do this for me and I'll do that for you. I remember as a child that I played the trumpet expert. And I was taking lessons one summer, and I really wasn't into it that much, and I wasn't that good, not like you. And I would, not practice as much as I should, and so I would prepare to go to this lesson knowing that I wasn't prepared, and I would say to God, if you just get me through this lesson, I'll practice from here on out. Well, as all of us that make that kind of a deal with God, we usually, we don't carry through. So, is that the nature of our relationship with God? Is it a transaction? Are we expecting? And that's what the Satan said to God. He said, look, sure, he's loyal to you, he's faithful to you. Look at what you've done for him. He's got this beautiful family, all these animals, he's got great wealth. So that's one issue. And then justice. What about the place of justice in the order of things? Is it fair that Job suffered all these calamities? Did he would tell you, and this was Job's position, I didn't do anything to deserve this. I am, like God said, I am blameless and upright. I didn't do anything. I don't deserve this. And which really raises the whole question about suffering. The place of suffering in our lives. What does that mean in terms of our relationship with God, God's relationship with us, the way he works in the world? Where does suffering fit into all of that? And it's common to all of us. And this story, this Job story, as we said last week, is played out in our existence and in people around us every day of the world. As recently as yesterday, you would know something that has happened either to yourself or to someone else that's, as we said, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, I don't want to dwell on this a lot, but I just want to sort of finish out the story and tell you a little bit about what the friends say. And the first 3 chapters of Job were all prose, narrating the story. Now, as the friends speak, and it follows a very symmetrical pattern. A friend speaks, Job responds. A friend speaks, Job responds. And this goes on for like 35 chapters. There's 42 chapters in the book. And the middle part, not the middle part, but the bulk of it actually is this poetry where the friends are speaking, and then towards the end, God responds. He speaks out of the whirlwind. And then the last half of the last chapter is narration again, and that's the sort of a fairy tale ending where everything just turns out beautifully for Job. And he has a more beautiful family than he had before, and he has more wealth, and it's just, it's wonderful. So, and I don't know if you want to follow along, I don't think you really need to, but I'm going to tell you where I am. Chapter 5 of Job, verse 8. This is Eliphaz, the first friend to speak. And he says, well, as for me, I would seek God, and to God I would commit my cause. And then in verse 17, how happy is the one whom God reproves, therefore do not despise the discipline of the Almighty. Now, how comforting do you think that is to Job? First of all, he doesn't think he's done anything wrong. But if I were you, Job, I would seek God. I would go to God and ask him and submit your cause to God. And how happy is the one? Job is not happy. How happy is the one God reproves? Therefore, do not despise the discipline of the Almighty. Then in chapter 8, this Bildad, verse 4, 5, and 6. If you will seek God and make supplication to the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, surely then he will rouse himself for you and restore to you your rightful place. So what you have to do is you have to go to God and you have to lay yourself before him and acknowledge your sin. Tell him what admit to him what you did wrong, and he will make it all right. He will restore you to your rightful place. Then the last one is chapter 11, Zophar. For you say, Job, this is your claim, Job, my conduct is pure, I am clean in God's sight. But, oh, that God would speak and open his lips to you, and that he would tell you the secrets of wisdom, for wisdom is many-sided. Know then that God exacts of you less than your guilt deserves. So he's telling him, yes, you have suffered terribly here, but it's less than what you deserve. Because whatever you're not telling us, God knows that you did something to deserve this. And he's given your punishment is less than what you actually deserve. And so that's better that his friends would have remained silent, I think. But then this is just sort of an aside. There's another friend who appears in the middle of this book, who starts to speak. He's never been identified before. He's just a different character that appears in the middle. And so a lot of scholars think, well, this must have been written by more than one person, because this is just an add-in, this other person. So we're not even going to talk about him. But so Job wants to make his case to God. He wants to essentially have a trial. And in verse 20 or chapter 23 says, "Today also my complaint is bitter. His hand is heavy despite my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his dwelling," talking about God. "I would lay my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would learn what he would answer me and understand what he would say. Would he contend with me in the greatness of his power? No, but he would give heed to me. An upright person could reason with him, and I should be acquitted forever by my judge." So Job is so convinced of his own innocence, he says, look, if God would just give me a chance to speak and come before him, I'm sure I could make him understand. So he's sort of taking the position, well, this God just doesn't really understand. He doesn't understand that I'm innocent and I don't deserve this. So I need to be heard by God. I need to get in front of him. So then in chapter 38, God finally speaks. And it says in chapter 38, this is verse 1 through a whole bunch. He talks for quite a while. "Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up your loins like a man. I will question you, and you shall declare to me." So how would you like to hear those words from God? I'm going to ask some questions of you, and you are going to answer me. This is the first question. I think this is maybe the sort of the single most important line in all of Job. "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you must know. Or who stretched the line upon it? on what were its bases sunk, or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the heavenly beings shouted for joy? Or who shut in the sea with doors when it burst out from the womb? And God goes on like this for some time. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Essentially, he's saying to Job is, who are you that dares to question me and whether I understand what you're going through? And who is it that sort of set all this in motion, and who is it that laid the rules for how we live in this world? That is really the and then after that sort of a confrontation with God, Job realizes that he has met his match, and that he's not going to prevail in his confrontation with God, and he repents. That's the end of, really the end of chapter, before the fairy tale ending. That's the end, as Job repents. He realizes that, that God has said to him, look, I'm the one who is in charge here, and that doesn't really provide us with a very satisfying answer to why all this happened, and what are we to make of our own suffering. But that's what we're left with. At least that's what Job leaves us with, and so I don't really know that there's an answer in this book. There's been a lot written about it. I want to introduce a book that I read, and something that the paper that passed out. A lot of this this paper entitled "Why Not Me." That was written. I wrote that several years ago, actually, and it appeared in the Tapestry as a. At that time, we were doing monthly little blurbs like that to sort of advertise, if you will, the Stephen ministry care that we have at the church. And so this is something I wrote to illustrate circumstances under which a person may feel the need for a Stephen minister. Job, I thought, was a good background for that. But the book that I was talking about is a book entitled A Grace Disguised, and the man's name is Jerry Sitzer, who wrote it. S-I-T-T. A Grace Disguised. And the man's name who wrote it is Jerry Sitzer. And he's not writing as a, authority on the subject. He's writing as someone who has had a Job-like experience. He was he was driving with his family, had an automobile accident. They were hit by a head-on collision by a drunken driver. His wife, a daughter, and his mother were killed in the accident. There were 3 children, and he and 3 of his children survived. So he wrote this book about his experience, and it really, I would recommend this book for anyone, whether you're going through something like this, a Job-like experience or not. It really addresses all of the issues, I think, that are raised by Job. He sort of, I think, very succinctly summarizes the question of where is God, in all of this. This question, the question of human suffering, introduces us to the perennial problem of theodicy, which is humanity's attempt to reconcile the apparent contradiction between the experience of suffering and the existence of a good and powerful God. there appears to be two possible answers. Either God is powerful, all-powerful, but not good, and thus a cruel God who causes suffering, or God is good, but not powerful, and thus a weak God who cannot prevent suffering, though he would like to. Both answers have problems because they appear to undermine what we want to believe about God, namely that he is both powerful and good. So, in the end, he rejects both of those thoughts, and but it raises, you know, all those are the issues that are dealt with. What do we make of suffering? What are your thoughts on that subject about, you know, the goodness of God versus, is he powerful and good? Is he one or the other? How do we reconcile that?
Rob, it reminds me of, I was looking up a verse earlier, getting ready for this lesson, and it's Romans 5:3-5. It talks about, we rejoice in our suffering, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us into shame, because of God's love has been poured out on our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. And I thought that kind of that chain of, that reminds me of the suffering thing, reminds me of that verse.
Well, and yes, and that is a good verse. There's something very similar in James. It's take a look at I think it's in chapter 1, the first 3 or 4 verses of James, about that same litany about perseverance and
the testing of your faith. This is James 1:3, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and sorry, maybe that's not.
no, I think that's it.
And let endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking in nothing. I feel like there's another one somewhere else.
It goes on beyond that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We don't have time to search for it, but yes, it's a very similar thought. I think now the word that bothers me a little bit in there is testing, as if, and there you could read that. You could read that into Job, that the testing, you may very well, your faith may very well be tested, but is it God who is doing the testing? Is that what he does? I have a difficult time taking that view that God tests our faith. I think we may be tested by life, but I don't think it's correct to say that God is the one who tests us. That's my view. Another book that addresses a lot of these issues is a book. It's actually a book of lessons, and I've taught several lessons out of here. It's by Adam Hamilton. I think you're probably familiar with him. The name of the book is Half-Truths. The subtitle, God Helps Those Who Help Themselves, and Other Things the Bible Doesn't Say. That's the half-truth. What he says is we have a lot of these sayings that we say, that there may be a kernel of truth in there, and most people think that there's something in the Bible that actually says that, and there's not. And the one that that is apropos to today's lesson is God won't give you more than you can handle. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure all of you have heard that. And in Adam Hamilton's view, the first fallacy of that statement is it's not God who's giving you these problem areas in your life. That's not the source of the problem. And we may not understand life well enough to know exactly what is the source. In my view, I think it's life. That's that is the human condition. Is that we experience these things. We talked last week about so often when something really bad happens to us, or anything really, is, why? Why? And often we say, well, why me? Why did this happen to me? One thing I think you can observe is you have the ability to be a little bit more philosophical about it. If it's your neighbor that happened, then you can go to your neighbor and explain to him, well, these things just happen. When it happens to you, we're not quite so, we're not quite so philosophical about it. We want to know why it happened to me. Why? Well, and that's one of the best chapters in this book, I think, the Sitzer book, is he writes this chapter, why not me? Why shouldn't, if this very same, automobile accidents happen to people every single day, and catastrophic automobile accidents, and family members are lost, why can I look at that philosophically, and why shouldn't it be me? Why is it any different when it happens to me than if it happened to my neighbor? Why? So that's sort of the gist of this.
I think all of us in life go through your experience, whether divorce, whether lost of money, lost your children, lost your wife. It happened to many of us. And sometimes we cannot but complain to God. But yet, I remember a song, I don't sing in the United States. It sounds like this: by and by, when the morning comes, all the saints together come home. They will tell story how they overcome. They will understand by and by. That's how that is. We go through their life, and we're so lucky. You have God still on your side. You have God on your side in good time and the bad time. You are in sickness, in health. You have God. Believe me. You are the luckiest person on the face of the earth when you're able to talk about Job in here. Because your life, believe me, in God's hand. Much more than you can ever think about it. And as I go through now, in fact, right now, do I complain to God? No, not complaining. But I'm grateful I have a support, a comfort, a hope more than I have anything else to lift me up in life. I think as you go through life, maybe you're so very young, but some things happen. You're still the luckiest person, not because you live in America, but you know God more than a lot of other people.
I have a point I'd like to say. I think that these things happen possibly because you can relate to people if you've gone through something, and sort of like self-help groups, it's like a way God, I'm gonna say it's God that makes these problems, but it makes you more aware of humanity. When things happen to you, or to someone close to you, there are many people that that's happened to. And I think that in a way is it's a tight hug.
It is. It's. I think it's similar to the verse that Dennis read. Through that process, you gain understanding, you gain endurance, you gain perseverance. And Robert, I think your comments are very well spoken, and I believe that is the conclusion that we are to come to from Job, and from the modern day Job, and anyone who's been through that. Job wanted to have this trial, and his point was it's not fair, it's not just. And Sitzer says, God spare us from a life of fairness. The quote that I have on this page too: to live in a world with grace is far better than to live in a world of absolute fairness. A fair world may make life nice for us, but only as nice as we are. We may get what we deserve, but I wonder how much that is and whether or not we would really be satisfied. Have you ever thought about that? Well, if you got what you deserved, what would you really get? A world with grace will give us more than we deserve. It will give us life even in our suffering. And he talked about, how the loss that he suffered. He said he will never get over that. It will always be a loss. It will always be painful. But what he has gone on to have a very fulfilling and rewarding life with his other children, and there are things that have happened in his life, relationships that he has had, that he never would have had the accident not occurred. Now, he's saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's why the accident happened. I'm just saying my life has been rewarding in so many ways and fulfilling in so many ways, and in ways that would never have happened had it not been for the accident. He had a caretaker, a very young woman, came into his life to care for his children. Well, he has developed she has become like a daughter, and she's now married and has children of her own. That's a relationship that is so fulfilling to him. He never would have had it. He never would have met that person. So you really have to have, I think a mature faith and a mature outlook to come to some of the conclusions that he has, and rather than the conclusion that or the idea that God has caused this pain, or that to get upset with God, as Robert says. This is our life. We talked about what the title to this lesson is, or we thought it might be, why good things or why bad things happen to good people. I think maybe it's more appropriately when bad things happen to good people, and how do you respond? What is your response to that? What is your reaction? How do you cope with that? How do you carry on and maintain your relationship with God? Or it might be when life happens. Really, I think and that may be a more modern viewpoint than what it was when Job was written. But the author of Job was, I think, modern in a lot of respects. He or she, whoever it was, or however many writers there were that put this together, I don't think they ever felt like the answer was Job's catastrophes were caused by as punishment from God or anything of the sort. I think the person wanted us to think about all these things and really come to the conclusion that we have, that they're part of life, and it's our way of responding to them that really allows us to carry on and to not lose our faith in God. So there we are.
Thank you, Rob, I appreciate it
Thank
very much.
you.
I always think of Abraham Lincoln's quote from the second half of Job about his friends. He said, it's better to remain silent and have people think you're a fool instead of opening your mouth and move on out. Okay, let's, thank you again, Rob, we appreciate that. Let's go through our prayer requests for today. Of course, the Pastor Search Committee, Vicki Con Beasley and Brian Rollins, both with COVID-19. Safe travels for Joe Groner, he's in Mexico. Was Henry Stone's father, Bill Stone, died on July 14th. I think everyone has signed the card. It's here, I've got it there, I'll get it mailed today. Laura Snow, doing better after foot surgery, we're glad of that. And Ray, you're doing okay after picking her up from the hospital. Getting rear-ended, I can't believe it. Sorry about that, but I'm glad you're doing well. Safe travels for Don and Barbara Floyd as they're in Italy this week. Okay, Dale is having some struggles with situational depression. Tell me what's
You know, like, it's okay.
good. Thank you for listing that. Okay, pray for my younger nephew Grant. Normal teenage struggles. This is from Diana on that one, and he's in Nashville.
He's in Nashville.
Okay. And Laura has prayed for her sister Robin and her depression. She's going through a good bit of depression right now, so we'll do that. Are there any other prayer requests that we need to add to our list? If not, let's pray, and thank you for coming today, and I hope we all enjoy church in a few minutes here. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, the time to come and read your word. We appreciate the time and energy that Rob put into the lesson as he presented to us today. Help us that we may deal with this sometimes with life and help us to deal with it in a positive way and not to brush off other people's problems as something that is petty. Father, we pray for Vicki Con Beasley and for Brian Rollins as they are getting over COVID-19. We pray for safe travels for Joe Groner as he's traveling in Mexico. We pray for Henry Stone and his father and especially his mother as they have lost Bill on July 14th. We pray for all of Bill's family. We're grateful for Laura Snow that she's doing better after foot surgery and that Ray was not injured in a car accident that happened this week, picking her up. We pray for safe travels for Don and Barbara Floyd as they travel in Italy with Matt and their family. We pray for Dale, who's having struggles with situational depression. Just be with her, give her strength and energy, and surround her with people that are positive that will help her. And we pray for Diana's younger nephew, Grant, who's going through normal teenage struggles. Be with him and to give him the friends to be around him that will be a positive influence. We pray for Laura's sister, Robin Dennis, as she's going through depression. Help her to find some hope in her life. Father, we thank you for our staff, for Wilshire. Help them as they lead us as we go forward, and with the Pastor Search Committee as they are in their process, give them the strength and endurance and discernment. And we pray for that person who will become our senior pastor, that you will prepare that person's heart. Thank you again for all your many blessings. Help us to be your hands and feet in this part of the world. And we pray. Amen. Thanks again. with it and go. If you don't mind, I'll send
I'm
you,
sure
we're starting
you'll
about
find
this
something
in
like that.
September. And we'll go through April. If there's anything in the meantime, what's you do, if you don't.
Good to see you, Merv. So good to see you.
Yeah.
Is everybody back in their condos? Are they all,
Yeah, we're back.
everybody's rebuilt all like, wow, that's wonderful. I can't believe it. I bet it's all new, right? That's right.
Put in the new.
Great.
If you want to get
Still taking
free,
flows
That's
every year since they've been back.
Right now.
I think it's just gonna be a,
yeah.
they say, one of the theories was that, the last one they had, the vaccine, but they had a very invasive or contagious version. Had mild symptoms. Everybody thought.
I don't, whatever he signed,
So I do is we may be in that same path. I mean,
Yeah.
we did jump shot, we still lost a billion.
get just
But we could have lost
lens,
10
plain
million.
lens replacement.
We lost 50 billion.
You can get a lens, so he was their side, but also you can use ours.
Good to see you.
So
Robert,
you
always
would
enjoy
get just
this.
the section
So good to see you, Mark.
for, which is what he ended up choosing.
So good to see you, Faith.
Or-
And good to see your mom.
Thank you. Than just the single vision correction. Medicare pays for
You're driving